On everybody, and welcome to the Saturday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show, sponsored by Bet365. I am your host, Josh Harris. As you're coming in, make sure to smash that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a lot. Joining me, as always, Slim Cliffy. Excited to break down this 13-gamer?
Yeah, I am more excited than I was to watch those games yesterday because I only caught the third period of Buffalo-Philadelphia, and it looks like I missed most of the game by that point. Really interesting 13-gamer here tonight because as I was going through the slate this morning, the thing that stuck out to me was like there's a lot of road teams that I kind of like tonight. And then, you look at the implied totals. Like there are a couple 3.7s on the road here tonight. There's a whole bunch of teams at 3 or higher. So one of those nights where there are a lot of road teams in play, I like, because I think that opens up the slate a little bit more rather than, Nashville's in Colorado, so you got to play Colorado, or San Jose's in Edmonton, so you got to play Edmonton. Like those types of things, we don't have that on the slate. So I like it. I dig it. Looking forward to going through them.
Yeah, I Josh stacked the Sabres last night, so my night was early very quickly because Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen gave up 2 goals on 2 shots in a minute and 9 seconds. So I was like, well, see you later. And I entered some basketball bets and got my money back, but that I would not advise doing that. I'm just a little bit crazy. But yeah, this is a good slate. There is a couple obvious chalky spots like, Florida in Chicago, and, the Florida second line is still super cheap and this and that. But like, there's not going to be a spot where the chalk is so overwhelming that if you fade them and they go nuts, like you'll have no shot. Like usually on slates like this, there'll be multiple paths. Like even if Florida 2, it comes in 15, 20%, whatever it is, and they get like 3 goals and 4 assists, like, yeah, that's really good. But there are a ton of other lines in that range that will have probably outcomes at least 75% of that. So like, you're not going to be dead as a doornail. So, it should be a good slate. I like this slate. Flyers 2024 Stanley Cup champions. I see Ray Rock's been inhaling the copium before joining us in the chat room today, but they definitely do look better than last year. Tony DeAngelo being not on the team and Couturier being back helps. Couturier is still out tonight. Carter Hart's out for 6 weeks, but they are definitely improved. Bob Brink, Philly favorite already, but yeah, we should probably get into this slate. We got a lot of games to break down. Before we do, you can join the Stochastic Hall of Fame by changing your avatar on DraftKings and FanDuel. How to do that, you go to stochastic.com/avatar, download it, and change it on DraftKings and FanDuel. Place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants. Now possible on DraftKings NHL. Wasn't for a while there. Tweet the wins to @StochasticHOF on X. If you don't have X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, you can email us with your screenshot and win a free month of Stochastic package of your choice. You can only win once in a calendar year. John says Kaprizov, Rossi, Boldy, top line. We'll get there, my friend. We will get there. Can I just say, Sebastian Aho, little dirty play taking Fox out. Carolina Hurricanes fans saying, "Oh, he had nowhere to go." He had a place to go.
Listen, man, your co-host is a Montreal Canadiens fan who saw a potential cup run explode when Chris Kreider ran through Carey Price. So don't give me this garbage about he had places to go, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to leave this. We're going to let that conversation die right on the table, and we're going to move to the next game because I'm about to get heated over that.
Brandon Gallagher.
No, we're not doing this. We're not doing this.
We'll save it for like a 5-game slate, and we'll just go at it for 30 minutes. But yeah, let's get into the slate, shall we? Now that we have all the angry energy going, let's talk about the Bruins, the Boston Bruins with a 3.2 total heading into Detroit. I forgot what Detroit team. I almost said the Tigers. The Red Wings have a 2.8 total. Boston's still flopping their lines around. It's going to be Pavel Zacha in between David Pastrnak and James Van Riemsdyk, Charlie Coyle, Jake DeBrusk, Brad Marchand. Back to Courtois. I don't know if that's correct, but I like saying it like that. Geeky and Frederick on the third line. Minor changes to the Detroit depth, which we don't really care about for stacking purposes. Joe Veleno and David Perron flip-flops. So now the second line is Comfer and Veleno. Could be a stack against type deal. Don't have much interest in the Detroit depth. We'll just get that out of the way. Boston's a little bit interesting story here. Do you have any interest in that second line going up against Detroit depth here?
No, it's the top line.
Yeah. Okay. I was trying to alley-oop you after that, Aho stuff.
I mean, we'll have to see. We won't know exactly what the power plays look like. Like yesterday in practice, they ran Pastrnak, Zacha, James Van Riemsdyk, and Charlie Coyle. But that was with Brad Marchand not practicing. Marchand's been taking practices off basically so far this year. He's pulling a Patrice Bergeron. I assume he's going to take Charlie Coyle's spot, so that would still leave a perfectly correlated top Boston line. Like Boston's top line, I'll bring up our top stacks for the first time today. 8.1% top 2 stack, 2.6% ownership. It is a huge leverage spot here on this slate. They're going to be going up against Detroit's top line, and they have been pretty good offensively. Like obviously DeBrincat, Larkin, and Raymond have been very good to start the season. They slowed down a little bit over the last few games, but they're still generating. It's just that they started so hot. They're going to regress eventually. The thing is they're giving up 3.3 expected goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, and that is a pretty bad defensive number. That's obviously way, way below average. The thing that's been saving them is their goaltending. They're getting .957 goaltending behind them, which is absolutely absurd. Another one of those things that probably should regress. So you have this Boston top line, like Pastrnak and Zacha have been very good together again, as they were last year. They've been very good so far this year. The price has come down a little bit on that line. They're under 20 grand as a line. They're often between 20 and 21,000. So they're not hyper expensive here tonight. Good matchup against Detroit. Detroit doesn't really take a ton of penalties, but they are above average at 3.8 times shorthanded per game. League average is at about 3.5 right now. And on top of that, their penalty kill is riding hot as well. They're getting like 900 save percentage on the penalty kill, which is that might lead the league at the end of the season, but it would be it'd be the highest that they'll get all season. It won't get better. I think all around this plays as a pretty good spot for Boston 1, and it is one of the top lines that I'm considering here tonight because perfectly correlated, probably going to get their fair share of power play time. Zacha Pastrnak have looked good. It's a good matchup at 5-on-5. It's a good matchup on the penalty kill. It worries me that they're missing so many defensemen. I'm wondering if they might not run into the issues that Ottawa has been having, which is moving the puck when the guys that are healthy and in the lineup aren't on the ice. But other than that, I think it's lining up pretty well for a Boston 1 game for me. So I have interest in the Boston top line here. If you want to move Marchand in over James Van Riemsdyk, make it a power play stack or something, I think that's fine. But I have no interest in Detroit in this matchup. For me, this is about Boston's top line.
Yeah, I agree there. I see our old producer in the chat doing the Lord's work, dropping the monthly and weekly memberships in there. He's a Flyers fan too, but we miss him. Now we go self-producing. We started a trend, and he was a good producer. Mike, we miss you. Also see Wolf Girl said, sup, went 2.5x the other night on Van 2 Yotes 1 with Quinn Hughes. Thanks, guys. Been lurking a bit this season, but want to say thank you. Saw you lurking in the chat the other day, playing some World of Warcraft, I think. But yeah, congratulations to you. Say what's up in the chat once in a while. Everyone likes to hear from you. You're like the most interesting person we've ever met.
Yeah. Good to hear from you. Don't be shy to say hi, is what I'll say.
Yeah. How much Erik Karlsson is too much? I don't know. He's underpriced tonight on that. And that is the biggest narrative street I think we've had in a while. But yeah, we'll get to that game. But for now, let's get to the Tampa Bay Lightning 3.2 total heading into Ottawa. The Senators have a 3.4 total. DJ Smith going a bit Galaxy brain here. Going with Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, Matty Joseph. Second line, still the same. Norris, Tarasenko, Kubalik. Third line of Batherson, Giroux, and the center who's not in the player pool that they just called up. I don't know why they are moving Giroux down. Maybe it's just because that's the center that got called up. They need someone on that line.
No, you don't. Just play the top six the entire game.
What I'm getting at here is I think DJ Smith is overreacting to his two best puck movers not being on the ice. I don't know why you put Joseph up on the top line. I would have had interest in Stützle, Tkachuk, Giroux tonight. Joseph there makes them a bit cheaper, makes them a lot worse offensively. Like we talked about this before the show, we're gonna dump on Ottawa and they're gonna kill us tonight. It's just what it is. Like you mentioned on Bunch on the second line, they don't have a playmaker on that line. Like I just don't understand what they're doing with their lines, and I also don't understand what Tampa Bay is doing with their lines. They have the top line of or if you want to call it the top line of Kucherov, Barry Boulette, and Anthony Cirelli. Second line of Hagel, Point, and Esamont. Like I wanted to have both sides of this game because it's a 6.5 trending towards a 7. It's just like these lines are impossible to stack right now.
Yeah. One thing I'll say is it's not a very good power play matchup for Ottawa. Now, Ottawa is a team that draws a lot of power plays. They're leading the league in power play opportunities per game, which is why they can put up good DFS scores without necessarily being that great at 5-on-5. Problem is Tampa Bay is giving up the fewest power plays per game this season, which is, I think, is still a pretty wild stat. But they're down at 2.6 times shorthanded per game. Like I said earlier, league average is about 2.5 or 3.5. Sorry, so about one power play less per game to the opponent. That's a pretty big deal for this Ottawa team. They've never had perfect power play correlations, like 2 guys on this line, 2 guys on this line, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't really change a whole lot for me. It's just the way the lines are now. What I will say is that Tkachuk and Stützle have had good offensive numbers, whether Claude Giroux is there or not. It's just that a lot of the minutes without Claude Giroux also had Drake Batherson. And yeah, he's not a great playmaker, but he doesn't need to be on a line with Tkachuk and Stützle, right? I don't know exactly what Matthew Joseph brings to that line. Not that Joseph is a bad player, but if Matthew Joseph is on your top line, things are going very, very wrong. Like that's kind of the way I look at it, right? And you mentioned how they didn't have a playmaker on the second line. They don't even put Claude Giroux there. They put him down on the third line with Drake Batherson. So I agree with you. I think they're just full-blown panicking right now, especially with everything that's gone on off the ice with this team, starting in the offseason and then continuing to now. It doesn't feel like a great power play matchup for them. And that's the main thing that's keeping me away from Ottawa. Is like, I actually don't mind this spot, especially with what Tampa Bay is doing to their lines. It's just, if Ottawa only gets 2 power plays here tonight, is that enough to really carry, Brady Tkachuk and Tim Stützle, which is still a pretty expensive 2-man, right? Yeah. They're almost $15,000 for those 2 guys on DraftKings, just those 2 guys alone. you had Sanderson on the blue line or something like that, you're looking at a $20,000 stack with just 2 forwards and a defenseman. So can they get there if they only have 2 power plays? That's where my doubts come in, and I don't think so. So, like, I don't have any problem with one-offing some guys from this Ottawa team. And I think that's something I would have a lot more interest in is, like, go one-off Drake Batherson at 4,600, playing on the third line with Claude Giroux. It might get them away from some top competition. They're still on the power play and all that. So something like that I'd be interested in, not full stacking. On the Tampa side, I just don't know where to go. You know what I mean? Like, in theory, a line of Hagel, Point, and Esmont, I think could be pretty good. But the problem is you're only getting one guy on the top power play unit, right? And Tampa's power play has been a big reason why these guys have had DFS success so far this season. So, if you want to dip down and go like to the Kucherov line, go play him with Anthony Cirelli. Again, you only have one guy on the power play on that line. The only line with 2 guys from the top Tampa Bay power play on it is the Nick Paul line, which feels like absolutely insane to me to say out loud, but that's kind of where we are right now. So Stamkos and Paul have actually been generating reasonably well so far this year. Like, yes, they're overheating. They're shooting 20% as a line. Like, half that would still be like a really high rate. So I worry about that, but I think it's that Stamkos Paul Sherry line that I like best. I'm just not sure I'll be full stacking anything on either side. I think this is a game where I'll be picking my one-offs and hope I can get like a goal plus a shot bonus from one of the guys or something like that.
Yeah, it just feels kind of Seattle Kraken-y, these lines. I don't know how else to describe it. Paul says Montreal won for all of King Midas's silver. We're about to get to that game. Now that you're on them, we're off of them. But yeah, no, let's talk about them. Montreal Canadiens with a 3.1 total heading into into St. Louis. The Blues have a 3.3 total. Looks like what's his face? Christian Dvorak will be back tonight. And we are trying to figure out where he's going to slot in. I think he's going to be on this. He's going to be centering Slavkovsky and Josh Anderson. They're going to move Newhook up to the top line with Caulfield and Suzuki, which I actually really like. Didn't so much like the Newhook trade, but I think it's not really the player. It was what they gave up. We're just going in on Montreal today. But yeah, I Suzuki, Caulfield, Newhook against a St. Louis team back-to-back, even though I think they're better goalies than that in Hofer. I don't know, man. Like, Suzuki's a really good playmaker. Newhook is really fast, and Little Boy Goals does just that, score goals. I'm in on Montreal one tonight. What about you?
Yeah, I was until Haas said that he was in on Montreal, and now I'm terrified. It'll be that Haas. Yeah, we don't know what the Montreal lineup's going to look like, right? That's kind of the problem. Now, thankfully, even though they're in St. Louis, it's going to be a 7 Eastern start. So we're going to have lines before the slate locks. Like, that's the upside here. What you and I were talking about before the show is that Caulfield and Suzuki have actually been generating some shot volume this year. Like, that was the big issue with them last year, is that they were really riding high percentages without a lot of shot volume. Now, the volume still isn't great. It's actually a little bit below league average, but they were well below league average last year. So there have been improvements made as long as they don't have Josh Anderson on the wing. And as you mentioned, Newhook, he's looked really good for Montreal this year. Like, I know he only has 5 points in 10 games, but he's also not on the top power play unit. And his line really hasn't scored a lot, even though they've been generating reasonably well. So 5 points in 10 games without much of a power play role, even though he does have 2 power play points because that second unit has been decent. Not a bad start for him. It's more that it's the matchup. Like you said, back-to-back for St. Louis. They are at home, but the top line is giving up 2.9 expected goals against per 60 minutes, which is well below league average. 64 shot attempts against per 60 minutes. Like the Detroit line we talked about earlier, they're getting great goaltending earlier in the year. 959 save percentage with St. Louis' top line on the ice. That's just something that just won't keep up for the balance of the season. It worries me that I can't believe I'm saying this, that St. Louis doesn't take a lot of penalties because Montreal's power play has actually been like reasonable this year, which is something they haven't had in several years. That kind of sucks. But at the same time, there's not much ownership coming in on the Habs. We have them coming in at about 2.1% on DraftKings tonight. I'll bring up those top stacks real quick. 2.1% for that new hook, assuming it's new hook, Suzuki, and Caulfield line. So 2% going up against a pretty bad defensive St. Louis team that's playing its second night in a row with the backup goalie in net. I don't know. I kind of agree. I like Montreal 1 here. Now, if people want to dip down to that Monahan, Pearson, Gallagher line, I think that's a fine filler here tonight because the second and third lines from St. Louis don't offer much more defensive resistance than the top line does. And that Montreal line actually has been good for them this year. I don't know if I would play them necessarily in single entry. But if I was 20 maxing 150, even 50 lives, something like that, I think that Montreal Monahan line certainly makes sense as a filler. But it is Montreal 1. I like the best here. I don't really have a lot of interest in the St. Louis side, but Montreal does take a ton of penalties. Like that's kind of where I'm getting mixed up here is, if St. Louis doesn't necessarily have to play well tonight, but if they get 5 power plays, they could have a really good DFS night. Like that's kind of where I'm getting crossed up. If anything, I would probably go to the second line. Kyrou, Shen, and Saad, they're all in this. I think they're still all in the same power play unit together, which is pretty important for them. They're all on the Torrey Krug power play unit, which I want to highlight here because their results with Krug running the power play have been way better than Justin Falk for years now. And being on that power play unit is more advantageous, probably even if they get less ice time. So I think I don't mind St. Louis too. Like Christian Dvorak is not a good defensive center at this point of his career. Josh Anderson is not a good defensive winger at all. Slafkovsky is still not a good defensive winger of his, right? I think it could be a pretty good matchup for St. Louis too, even on a back-to-back. So I don't mind them, but it is Montreal 1 I like best in this game.
Yeah, the St. Louis top power play unit has been abysmal with Falk up there.
Justin Falk's just not a power play defenseman at this point of his career.
No. Let's move on to the Leafs.
Yeah, let's do that. Oh, boy.
Buffalo with a 2.8 total. Heading into Toronto, the Leafs have a 3.8 total. Let's talk about those Leafs. They traded Pierre Engvall, signed Ryan Reeves to a 3-year contract. This is a Leaf spot. But like Devin Levi's in net for Buffalo. Buffalo's back-to-back on the road. It's just like Kylie Yonkrock just isn't it on the top line. So yeah, like these Buffalo lines are kind of strange to say the least. So like I don't have too much interest in the Leafs top line here. They're over 20,000. They have some positive leverage. Like I guess you can make it a power play stack. The Sabres looked awful last night, but like I guess you could do like Matthews, Marner, Nylander, but like if you want to go to that second line, they're having issues too. Like the Leafs just cannot figure out a way to get Tyler Bertuzzi into the mix here. He's looked really bad there. I don't have too much interest in the Leafs tonight. I just don't have too much interest in this game. I wish like Knees moved up or Domi moved up or something like that. Like, do you have any interest on either side here?
Yeah, I do. I definitely have interest in that Toronto second line. Like, I get it. I know Bertuzzi, like he got benched, and I know he's getting all the media or whatever. I was looking at some of the scoring chance data. There's a guy named Corey Snacer. I love that hat. There's a guy named Corey Snacer. He hand tracks games. He looks at things, at a lot of different things. One thing I look at for DFS is it's called scoring chance contributions. It's just a player's individual scoring chances, like ones he gets, plus assists that he has on a teammate's scoring chance. Bertuzzi's still rated pretty well this year. Like, yeah, he only has 3 points in 10 games. I'd say it's still a fairly small sample. Like it's only been 10 games and he's been moved up and down the lineup, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying he's looked awesome like he did in Boston last year, but I don't think he's looked terrible. And like Tavares and Nylander have looked really, really good so far this year. 70 shot attempts per 60 minutes, both with and without Bertuzzi next to them. Like they've been generating a lot with Bertuzzi there. I think John Tavares, I'm looking right now, a 5-year high in shot rate at 5-on-5, and that doesn't even get to how great William Nylander has been to start the year. They are expensive. I'll bring up top stacks once again for Toronto. That top line, or that second line, sorry, 20K, 12.5% top stack, 6.2% ownership. I want to highlight that they're not very far behind in top 2 stack percentage, that Toronto top line, which isn't something that we really see very often. Usually you'll see the Toronto top line like 50% higher, maybe even double that second line. I think it speaks to how much that top line has struggled. Like you mentioned, Calle Jarnkrok. I shared this yesterday, I think in our Discord, might have been in a DM. Again, with those scoring chance contributions I just talked about, there was one player, one forward in the sample of 123 forwards or something like that without a single scoring chance contribution this season, and it's Calle Jarnkrok. Like there are like fourth liners on basement teams that have been doing that have been helping out more offensively than Jarnkrok has. And not only that, if you look, you and I have talked about Mitch Marner. If you look at the NHL's new, public tracking data or whatever you want to call it, a lot of his skating metrics are down significantly from the last couple of years. And his shot rates are down. His shot, like I said, his skating metrics are down. His shot, like how hard his shot is way down. Not that he was ever like a guy that, ripped 100-mile-an-hour clappers, but he went from like the 65th percentile to like the 10th. I think Marner's playing through an injury. Like, I don't know if we can just call it a small sample anymore. We're at 10 games played. Like, this isn't like we're 4 weeks into the season. Like, maybe a week or two to get your feet under you. Things haven't been getting better. Matthews has still looked as good as he ever has. That's the thing that's carrying that line. Toronto won with Jarnkrok there. 57 shot attempts per 60 minutes. That's a line that, when they're at their best, is north of 70. I don't know. I am out on Toronto 1, but I am very much in on Toronto 2. Now, if you want to make it a power play stack and do like Matthews and Nylander with somebody on the blue line, I think that's perfectly fine as well. I think you can put Matthews with Nylander or Matthews with Tavares or with both Nylander and Tavares in this matchup. I have no problem doing something like that. I just don't think, like, Buffalo just doesn't really look that good. They also lost Matthias Samuelsson last night. He got injured. I don't think he's going to end up playing tonight. It's going to put a lot more minutes on guys like Henry Jokiharju, Connor Clifton, so on. So, like, I'm not sure it's really a good spot for Buffalo. I like Toronto too a lot in this game. I'm not playing the Buffalo side.
Yeah, I'm not super high on stacking Toronto. I think if I was going to do anything from Toronto, it would be a one-off Nylander, put him with Tavares, but like can add in Matthews, this and that. I understand why you love Toronto too. I just haven't been on Bertuzzi much this season. I've always loved Nylander. I think one-offing Nylander is fine. Tavares has looked better. It's just how I'm going to be building my lineups tonight. I just don't know if I can fit more than just Nylander. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying like Toronto 2 is like one of my favorite lines on the entire slate, but I really do like them in this matchup, considering what Buffalo's going through right now.
Yeah, I agree there. Let's move on. Columbus Blue Jackets with a 3 total heading into Washington. The Capitals somehow have a 3.5 total. We have some pretty high ownership here on Washington. The top line projected for 15.1% ownership and the second line projected at 14.4% ownership. I kind of get it because they play, like, Elise Kuznetsov plays a ton of minutes and they're 11,800 against a Columbus team that is just pitiful defensively. So, like, I get it, but like a 2.4% top two stack percentage with that kind of ownership, that's that's bad chalk to me. I like the Washington top line. I just wish they weren't coming in this high owned because Strome and Ovechkin have played well. Wilson up there is fine. Like the Gaudreau Jenner Roslovic line. I don't even know how the matchups goes because like Washington does weird stuff with their matchups. Sometimes they'll send out like God knows who against top comp. I know it's been Kuznetsov recently. So like Ovechkin, Strome are going to get, Fantilli, Marchenko, or like Texier or Bem. You know what I mean? So like Washington one's in a really, really good spot, but like over-owned Washington when they've had trouble scoring this season just gives me the heebie-jeebies. But like at least Ovechkin's shooting. So that top line makes sense to me. That second line just seems like bad chalk.
Yeah, I'll bring up the top stats because I got to show everybody how high owned they actually are. You can see it at the bottom here. We'll get to Florida in a bit. They're expected to be the highest owned line. And then it's those two Washington lines, like far and away above everybody else. And then they're the two highest lines over on FanDuel. There's going to be a lot of people playing Washington here tonight. The Washington top line has been good with Tom Wilson there. I wrote about Alex Ovechkin in my picks article, free to read, up on Stokastic.com. What a wonderful website. Just head on over to the NHL section. Ovechkin started the season playing with Nick Backstrom. In fact, he played like the first 2.5 games or whatever with Backstrom. And then like a week later, Backstrom looks like he's going to have to retire. Like, I think when it comes to Washington struggling early, it seems pretty obvious why that happened, right? Like Backstrom probably should have never suited up this season. And since he moved away from Nick Backstrom, he's been third in the league in shot attempts per minute, 7 points in 6 games. He added 90 seconds per game in ice time. He's looking like the Ovechkin of old, or certainly at least the Ovechkin of the last couple seasons rather than the Ovechkin of the first couple games. So I really do like Washington one here. They did use Tom Wilson at times on the top power play unit in their last game as well, so it would give them a perfectly correlated top line. It's just that there's a lot of ownership here tonight. Now, on a 13-game slate, if the trio comes in at 15%, I don't think that's awful, right? Because there are so many other spots that you can go to, and there's so many ways you can get different. You can play a 3-2-1 stack. You can play like a full Washington power play and then, like a super cheap 2-man somewhere else, like a cheap Montreal 2-man, like that Monahan line we talked about or whatever. So there are ways to get different. So I still don't mind them. I think that I might treat them like Ottawa and kind of fish for one-offs here. So like maybe play John Carlson on the blue line, one-off Alex Ovechkin, like those types of things. I still like Washington one. Like, I know they're going to be the highest owned. They might be the highest owned team on the night. On a slate this big, it doesn't bother me as much. The Columbus side is where things get a little bit more interesting for me. Washington has improved defensively. I'm not sure their goaltending has got the memo. Because we had Darcy Kemper going the other night, and he looked absolutely terrible. The Columbus top line, in a very small sample, has been creating a lot of offense, like around 80 shot attempts per 60 minutes, approaching 50 minutes played together. That's quite a bit. Boone Jenner's at 3.7 shots per game. Like, Columbus's top line is going to come in under 5% owned. We just saw this Washington team get blanked by the New York Islanders. Now, the Islanders, they're the Islanders, but I don't hate the idea of Columbus one here tonight. I don't think I'm going to get there in single entry. I'd be more inclined to play them if I was playing a 20 max here tonight or something larger than that. I still do like the Washington top line, like 15% ownership be damned.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm normally someone who just does not like stack or one-offing a Matthews at high ownership because usually someone comes along for the ride. McKinnon at high ownership. Ovechkin at high ownership is fine because he could have like 10 shots on goal. You know what I mean?
Well, and there are games where like, he'll have like one assist through 58 minutes and then he'll score 2 empty netters and one of them will be assisted by Protas and, the other one's going to be assisted by Connor McMichael and Nick Jensen. Like, that's why you can play an Ovechkin one-off because he's the Winnipeg Jets of empty nets in the Eastern Conference. So
yeah, and he plays the full 2 minutes on both power play units. So like if he scores a power play goal, it could be from like Sonny Milano and like Haas. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, you can one off Ovechkin even if he is higher owned. Not that you can't one off like a Matthews at high ownership. It's a pet peeve of mine. Why haven't you guys gone NHL Premium yet? It's a serious thing. It even got me to get Starbucks, and every time you have Starbucks, it just makes me want to shake the cup like a white woman.
What?
I don't know. Listen, this is the first time I've had caffeine since May. I'm a little wired right now, but you can get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry by clicking the link in the description. I don't know why you guys haven't signed up. Even our old producer, who we miss dearly, has put the links in the chat. You get access to player and ownership projections, top stacks tools, line combinations, and the most important thing, the Discord. Lots of sharp minds in there. We have low stakes players, we have high stakes players, we have single entry players, we have cash players, we have high stakes players, we have MME players. Like, no matter how you play, there are people to help you. So yeah, I don't know what you're waiting for. Click the link in the description below. Get that weekly, get the monthly, get a Starbucks, add some sugar, get jacked up on caffeine. Let's move on to the next game. Carolina, it's just a nice tea, but I added sugar, so I'm a little crazy right now. Carolina Hurricanes with a 2.9 total heading into Long Island. We all know the dedrums of going into, I just made up a word, into Long Island. The Islanders have a 2.6 total. This game, Carolina is just a walking 5.5 total, no matter who they play. Adam Pelech is out for the Islanders, which means they're going to go back to that play four defensemen, play their third pair 8 minutes. So Dobson back in play, but there is no ownership on any of these lines tonight. This game screams MME. It does make me nervous that no one is on Carolina. Like, their top line, Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis coming in at 0.3 projected ownership. Like, if I was even 20 maxing, going 1 to 20 will get you way over the field. And I know it's the Islanders, and I know it's Sorokin, and I know they're at home, and I know offense goes to die in Long Island. A lot of things get lost in Long Island, whatever. But like 0.3% ownership, I think if I was MMEing, I'd be over the field on some of these top lines. I just don't think I'm getting to anything in 1 to 3.
This is tough because one of the reasons why we would be playing the Islanders is because playing Carolina, sorry, is because the Islanders really haven't looked that good on the penalty kill. Svechnikov is still on the second power play unit. Like, that's, I don't know why, but he's still on the second power play unit. And if you're not going to get that perfect correlation and you're playing a moderately expensive line, like, 18,600 on DraftKings, Svechnikov's still 3,600 on FanDuel. So I think that's 3 games in a row now. We got to keep a running tally of that.
He's going up 20% at least.
Yeah. So he's going to be they're going to be higher owned on FanDuel. But I don't really have like a problem stacking against the Islanders right now at this point. Like, I get that playing, like, going up against Sorokin really sucks. That's really not something that I would generally want to do. But one of the reasons why I would want to play Carolina 1 is because they do get some time. They would get some time against that Islanders top line that has been really leaky defensively so far this season. With Anders Lee there, they're up to 88 shot attempts against per 60 minutes, which is like, that's penalty kill numbers, honestly. The problem is they've kind of switched up their matching. So it's going to be the Carolina second line that's going to see a fair bit of Barzal's line. And Carolina's second line played 11 to 13 minutes in their last game. And that's the problem we're running into now with the Hurricanes, is that they're going to start pulling the Dallas Stars, where everybody basically plays 12 to 17 minutes a game, and it's going to be incredibly frustrating. So I think I'm with you. I think I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. If you're MMEing, I think Carolina 1 is certainly in play. I think Islanders 1 is certainly in play, because that Carolina second line has not been good defensively. Like, Kotkaniemi and Bunting have just not been good together this year. Not defensively. Offensively, they've been pretty good, but not on the defensive side. So I think it's both top lines for me and some MME. In a single entry, I just don't think I'm going to get there.
Yep. Agreed. Question from Matt McCarthy says, if you guys have time, could you explain how the Fantasy Hockey World Championship qualifiers works? There's different ticket values. Just real quick, if you're looking under the satellites and qualifiers tab on DraftKings, you'll see like a $25 qualifier to a $14.50 or a $18 one to a $432 qualifier. So if you win that $25, you'll get a $1,450 ticket to the actual qualifier. And if you win that, you'll get a ticket to the Fantasy Hockey World Championships, wherever that is. I've heard like Scottsdale, Arizona or something. I don't know. But like those satellites are to the qualifier, and you have to win the qualifier to win the seat to the live final. Los Angeles Kings with a 3.7 total heading into Philadelphia. The Flyers have a 2.9 total. Carter Hart, Sean Couturier still out here. Kings, large road total, 3.7. Fiala, Dubois, Laferriere projected around 6%. Danault, Moore, Kaliev projected around 6%. That line's 12,600. Love them as a filler. Love the Dubois Fiala line. Also really like the Kopitar Kempe Byfield line tonight, man. Like Byfield, he's not on that power play unit with Kopitar and Kempe, but like they're going to be getting Flyers top line without Couturier tonight. It's probably Sandstrom and net. Flyers are back to back. If you like a Kings line, play them. I think I'm leaning towards that Kopitar line though.
Yeah, I agree on the Kopitar line. That's the one that I've been leaning to. We've been looking at their numbers throughout the day. The entire line's been really good together. 3.3 expected goals for, 3.4 actual goals for per 60 minutes. Adrian Kempe averaging, I think he's up to like 3.7 shots per game, which would be, by far a career high for him. Byfield's not shooting a ton, but it's basically because all the shots are going to Kempe right now. I highlighted on Twitter in the game the other night against Ottawa. Byfield made an absolutely absurd seam pass through 4 players right onto Kopitar's stick, and then Kopitar passed it right to Kempe, and then Kempe rang it off the crossbar on an empty net. So, you get unlucky sometimes. But they've been really, really good together. With Sean Couturier gone, it takes a big part of their shutdown matchup away. I think Noah Cates, if they do decide to use, because Couturier played their last home game, so we don't know exactly how the line matching is going to go. I'm assuming they're going to use that Noah Cates line because Noah Cates is a defensive specialist right now at his point in his career. Noah Cates is pretty good defensively, so I think they could still shut down the Kings top line. It's just that they're not coming in with much ownership. Is one reason why I do like them. As you mentioned, coming in about 3% owned. That's perfectly fine. No Couturier. Flyers probably on their third string goalie. Power plays don't really matter a whole lot here because Philly's penalty kill has been arguably the best in the NHL to start this season. And they take the second fewest penalties. The only team taking fewer penalties than them is Tampa Bay that we talked about earlier. So, I do like Kings 1 at 3%. Kings 3 is where things kind of get interesting for me. I talked about Kaliev in my picks article today. Him and Danault have been excellent together since Arvidsson got hurt. Him and Danault and Moore. They're going to be going up, against the bottom 6 for Philly. More importantly, they're going to avoid Travis Sanheim and Cam York, which has really been a pretty great shutdown pair for the Flyers here. So I think I like Kings 3, but for me, it's both Kings 1 and Kings 3 that are definitely in play here. I will also mention on the Philly side, it's back-to-back, so I don't think I would necessarily play them. But Travis Konechny has really, really good offensive numbers when Morgan Frost is his center, going all the way back to the start of last season. They kind of showed that ability in the last game as well. Now that Frost is back in the lineup, I don't know if I'm going to play them tonight because of the situation that they're in, but it's definitely a duo to keep in mind going forward.
Yeah, I do like Frost Konechny. How long that lasts with Torts, we'll see. Let's move on to the next one here. The Florida Panthers with a 3.7 total heading into Chicago. The Blackhawks have a 2.7. Now, we were talking about Chalk Washington. It looks like the Flyers' second line is going to be the highest projected owned line of the night at 17%.
Florida second.
I don't know what the heck I just said, but yeah. Anton Lundell, Carter Verhaeghe, Matthew Tkachuk, 17,200. Verhaeghe was on the top power play unit over Evan Rodriguez. That's a big deal because Verhaeghe is putting up like 80 points without top power play time. Him, if he sticks on that power play. Ooh. So yeah, like I do really, really like that Panthers second line. You want to go to that top line, it's fine. Like there is no matchup that worries me on Chicago. Like there's none. They're just Connor Bedard and everyone else. So like I thought, Washington 2 is bad chalk. Like Florida 2 is fine. They're in an elite spot. Carter Verhaeghe and Matthew Tkachuk now on the top power play. Lundell, a bit of a offensive upgrade from Luosterainen. It's just like if you're going to play them, just know that if you put your lineup together, like Florida 2, LA 3, and D-men that fit, like might be a chance of a dupe, but like just there's so many ways to get different. I really like Florida 2 here.
Yeah, Verhaeghe going to the top power plays a pretty big deal for that line because, historically there'd only been one guy on the power play unit. Here there will be two. I don't know if it's necessarily a good power play spot though, right? Like it's been a while since Chicago was played. I think they had like 5 days off or something like that, or 4 days off. But the last time we had Chicago on the show, we talked about their penalty kill. Basically going back to the All-Star break last year, they've had at least a good penalty kill. Not a great one, but a good one. And that's basically carried over so far this season. On the year, there are only 3 teams giving up fewer shots per minute on the penalty kill than Chicago. It's Philadelphia, St. Louis, and Pittsburgh. And their top, I think they're 8th by fewest goals against. Like those are pretty good numbers. And again, it's not just this season. It's going all the way back to last year. So now we're looking at a sample of 35 games or something like that. Like it's not a tiny sample. So it is a good power play spot, I think, in general, because just about any time Florida plays, they're in a good power play spot. But, Chicago doesn't take a lot of penalties. They're below average in the league in that regard. Florida's not drawing the power plays they did last year. Last year, Florida, I think, was top 3 in power play opportunities per game. This year, they're in the middle. They're smack in the middle of the league. So if they only get 3 power plays against a top 5 power play and they're on the road, and they're going to be over-owned and, set 15 to 20% ownership. Like, I think it's a situation where I would, one-offing Matt Tkachuk has so much positive regression coming his way. Like, I think he's shooting 3% or 4%. Like, it's something crazy like that. And he's going to end up at 14% for the season. So, one-off Matt Tkachuk, certainly one-off Carter Verhaeghe. I think that's fine. I think they're just coming in with so much ownership. I'd almost be inclined to just go to the top line. Even though Reinhart, Barkov, and Rodriguez are starting to struggle a little bit offensively, 2.3 expected goals per 60 minutes. They're scoring 5.9 goals because they're shooting almost 17%, which is way, 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 way too high. But like you said, I'm not worried about any matchup from Chicago. So I think for me personally, I have no problem stacking either of the top 2 lines in Florida. I just don't think it's as good as a power play matchup as it would have been this time last year, basically. On the Chicago side, I kind of had interest in playing Bedard, but they're starting Taylor Hall on the 3rd line. I can't imagine that's going to last very long. But if it lasts till the middle of the 3rd period or something, then it's a waste of a stack. So honestly, I feel like I'm going to get burned, but I don't know if I'm going to be stacking either side of this game.
Yeah, I do want to play Bedard as well. It's just it's one of those things, if you make a Bedard Hall stack, Hall is going to stay on the 3rd line. You leave Hall off and he's going to be up in the middle of the 1st period. You know what I mean?
Right.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
I imagine Taylor, Hall's going to be on the top power play unit. So at worst, you're going to have power play correlation between them. Right. So there's still something there. It's just, I don't know, man. They suck.
Nick Foligno, the hatred, man. No, but yeah, let's move on to the next one. My New York Rangers with a 2.9 total heading into Minnesota. The Wild have a 3 total. Now, Adam Fox, long-term IR. Philip Hedl onto IR. Igor's banged up, so Johnny Quick is going to start tonight. I know Adam Fox hasn't had the best DFS start to his season, but my goodness, is he extremely, like, outside of Igor, the one New York Ranger you didn't want to get hurt is Adam Fox. Like, that blue line is going to suffer. Like, they still might be okay, but having to give those extra minutes to Trouba, who he can't like turn. He just knows how to skate straight, and that's it. The second, Keandre Miller getting a ton of minutes is going to be good because he is an excellent defensive player. But you get Zach Jones into the lineup. That's not the way I envision getting Zach Jones into the lineup. That third pairing could be okay, but like the Rangers without Fox on the ice, their expected goals against numbers go up. Not a shock there. Now for the Wild, they finally decided to move Rossi to the top line center in between Kaprizov and Boldy, and they're running a 5-forward power play unit with the top line, Joe Eriksson Ek and Marcus Johansson, kicking Zuccarello and Hartman down to the second power play unit. This is an interesting game because, one, the injuries. There's no Igor, no Fox. Without Hedl, the Rangers' center depth gets a little wonky. And the way Minnesota matches at home, they're going to be sending Joe Eriksson Ek out against the Rangers' top line, leaving that Boldy, Rossi, Kaprizov line going out against the Rangers' third line, which we don't have confirmation on, but it's probably going to be Blake Wheeler, Johnny Brzezinski, and Will Cooley. And they're probably going to see a bunch of that Zach Jones, Braden Schneider pairing, which, for a third pair, it's fine, but I don't know. I have interest in the Minnesota top line. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
I took the long road, but we got there.
I'll start on the Rangers side. I don't have interest in the top line. You mentioned the expected goals against with Adam Fox off the ice. I think it's also offensively where he makes a big deal. I was just looking earlier today. Their expected goals for go up 49% when he's on the ice to, obviously well above league average to well below league average when he's off the ice. Because
he's an unreal puck mover. Yeah.
Right. And they don't, like, Gustafsson can help, but they don't, like, Jacob Trouba's not a great puck mover. Schneider and Jones and those guys, like, they're fine, but, certainly nowhere near the caliber of Fox. Like, they just can't replace what he does at 5-on-5 particularly. So you have Zibanejad and Kreider and Kakko already struggling to score, losing Adam Fox, going up against Eriksson Ek and Foligno. No. The Rangers' second line is kind of interesting for me.
Yeah.
Because you still get Trocheck and Panarin on the top power play unit. And Minnesota's penalty kill has been by far the worst in the league this year. Shots against, goals against per minute, everything. Just absolutely god-awful. Like, it reminds us of what Vancouver's penalty kill looked like, in November of last year when, they were giving up like 20 goals every 60 minutes or something crazy like that. So you still get two guys on the top power play. Eric Gustafsson, I think, can replace Adam Fox on the top power play unit well enough.
Yeah.
And especially with that pathetic Minnesota penalty kill. So I still have some Rangers 2 interest here, but I'm with you. It's the Minnesota top line. We've been waiting for Marco Rossi to get to the top line basically since training camps open. I wasn't expecting Matt Boldy to go up there with them. It should be interesting how that works out because Boldy and Kaprizov typically haven't had great expected goals against or goals numbers when they've been together. You get Rossi there, who's, I think, a better playmaking center than anything else that they have. All three on the top power play unit. Like you said, they're going to be getting depth matchups from the Rangers, and you take out Fox, and then you have to move Trocheck up to the second line. Once you get into that bottom six with those depth defensemen, with John Quick and net, I'm with you. I really do like Minnesota 1 here. Like, they're easily my favorite line in this game. They're one of my favorite lines on this slate, and I will say I still like Rangers 2 here, but I think I'd be more inclined in a 20 max format or something like that.
Yeah, I do like Rangers too. And, Trocheck has not been very good to start the season, but he has been playing with Wheeler and a rookie. Going from Wheeler and a rookie to Panarin and Lafreniere is going to help. And it's on the top power play against the Wild penalty kill, which you have mentioned is awful. You can get the NBA lineup generator package for 50% off your first week, and then it goes to $8.95 after that. So you can get it for under $5. You can choose an ownership setting, lock and swap players, and export up to 20 DFS lineups. I actually played NBA last night because I had some expiring tickets, and I used the NBA lineup generator to set my lineup. I didn't cash because I made an idiotic swap, but that's on me, not the lineup generator. I go through all these lineups and I pick out the ones I want, and then I can compare them. And then I exported the one that I wanted to play. It's really a great lineup or a great tool. I use it for NFL all the time just to, figure out what the chalk is. I'll click on a chalky build and I'll run through some chalky builds just to see, what they're expecting the chalk to be. And then I'll make my changes from there. You have the ability to choose between balanced builds, highly projected builds, contrarian builds, chalky builds, et cetera, et cetera. You can save or discard lineups as you go. And with NFL, I know this is for NBA, but with NFL, you can choose, run back stacks and that kind of stuff. It's just a great tool. You get it for under $5. I don't know if you're an NBA player and you don't want to get the full package, like the full projections, all that kind of stuff. Get the NBA lineup generator package for under $5 for your first week. And it goes to $8.95 after that. Let's get to the Narrative Street Nation here. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 3.8 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have their highest goal total of the season at 2.6. Surprisingly, there's not a ton of ownership on Pittsburgh after Vancouver laid a 10 spot on them the other night. That game was just over after like 3 minutes. I don't know. Did we get confirmation on Pittsburgh power play units? Because they scored the last game with Riley Smith on the top power play unit and then took him off.
No, we don't have confirmation.
Yeah. And that's a bit worrisome to me because dating back to the beginning of last year, the Pittsburgh top power play has been pretty bad. Now you get the massive narrative nation with Carlson coming back to play the Sharks, and he's arguably very underpriced on DraftKings at 6,200. It's just like there's no in between here with the Sharks, right? We've seen Tampa run them over 6-0, but the top line didn't do too much. We've seen Nashville run them over, the top line didn't too much. Then you have teams like Vancouver that they had concentrated scoring. I kind of lean towards Pittsburgh having concentrated scoring here just because like they're bottom six. They don't have like a noted goal score. It's like Lars Eller redeems Zahorna and Drew O'Connor, right? They're pretty fairly concentrated in the top six. Like their top six, very, very good. Their bottom six, very, very bad. So I have a ton of interest in the Pittsburgh top six here, specifically that second line. I don't know. I just like the way they've been playing better. You want to go to that top line, perfectly fine. But the second line, 17,700, coming in less owned than the Minnesota top line we just talked about, and they're playing the Sharks. I don't know, man. Like it's going to be hard to not play Pittsburgh here tonight with fairly low ownership.
I got nothing to add. Like this, I'm so sick and tired of the Sharks team already. Like I'm serious. Like it's one of those things where this San Jose team is a perfect crystallization of why North American professional sports need relegation. Like I'm serious. The bottom four teams in the NHL every year should go to the AHL. And because then you would stop getting garbage like this where teams aren't even bothering to put a quality NHL team on the ice. It's really frustrating because this is a blank space every game, every time this team is on the ice. Like there's just no reason to ever watch these games. Play Pittsburgh too. Let's get to the next game.
Yeah, and I'll just one last thing. Like they just don't give a crap. Like Capo Kakkonen got hurt. And not one single Sharks player went to go check on him. Like Vancouver players were going to see if he was okay. Like they just don't give a crap. Yeah, let's get to the next game. Calgary Flames. Let's get to other teams that don't really give a crap. Calgary Flames with a 2.9 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 3 total. Okay. Calgary, bit of an enigma, right? Their front office, absolute joke show. But neither here nor there here. Top line for Calgary projected at 0.3% ownership. We talked a little bit before the show about this top line. Huberdeau and Mangiapane have had pretty good numbers together. They're 15,600 against Seattle, who is a decent team. They're good everywhere except for the goalie. Not great anywhere. Definitely not the goalie. But like at 0.3% for 15,600 for a line that has good numbers together, I'm interested in Calgary one.
Yeah, I am as well. And, we mentioned how good the numbers, the numbers have been really good for that Calgary top line, or at least with Huberdeau and Mangiapane together so far this year. 3.3 expected goals per 60 minutes, 4.2 actual goals per 60 minutes. They've been really, really good at 5-on-5 so far this year. And the thing is it's not just this year. Last year was the same thing. Expected goals not as high, 2.7. but still scoring 4.1 goals per 60 minutes. Like we were talking before the show, like Mangiapane and Huberdeau are the 2 best wingers. I don't know. Maybe they're only 2 good wingers. Like, I think that's kind of where they are at this point. Yeah. I think Blake Coleman's a fine, decent 2-way, third line winger, but they have 2 good offensive wingers on this team. If you play them separately, I'm not sure Kadri, even now at this point, he's 34 years old now? He's not the guy he was 3 years ago in Colorado or 4 years ago in Colorado. Elias Lindholm is easily one of the most overrated players in the NHL. So if you have Mangiapane and Huberdeau separated, there's really not a lot for them to play with otherwise. But when you have them together, they have been scoring 0.3% ownership per our top stacks tool. I'll bring that up again. 0.3% ownership, 1% top 2 stack. There's positive leverage here. I'm not worried about any of the matchups on the Seattle side. The Wenberg line has been fine, but I'm not worried about the goaltending or anything like that. Single entry, I don't know if I would necessarily say you have to play them. This would be, if I was 20 maxing or 50 lineups or something like that, this would be a Calgary line I would have in at least one of my lineups here tonight. On the Seattle side, it's picking one-offs. I'm not stacking Seattle. They just have all their power plays are broken up. Power play's not very good anyways, and they don't really draw a lot of opportunities. Seattle 2.9 times on the power play so far this season, 4th fewest in the league, tied for 3rd fewest actually. So, it's the Calgary goaltending. You really only need 15 shots to score 6 goals. So yeah, that can happen. But Bjorkstrand and Cartier have been shooting quite a bit. So I do like the idea of one-offing one of them here tonight. I don't think I'm going to get anywhere close to full stacking on the Seattle side. I honestly think I have more interest in stacking the Calgary top line.
Yeah. And you mentioned to me before the show, Calgary's top goalie prospect, Dustin Wolf, in the minor leagues with almost a 940 save percentage. Call the homie up. Let's move on to the next one. The Dallas Stars with a 3.1 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 2.9 total. This is 3-4 on the road for Dallas. This is the end of a long road trip. Vancouver's just coming off a 10 spot against the Sharks. No ownership in this game, really. The highest projected owned line is the Duchesne, Sagan, Marchment line at 0.8% projected. And I've actually been playing them a whole bunch recently. I don't know if I'm going to go there tonight. They've been playing about or a little bit more than the Dallas top line. The player with the most ice time the last 3 or 4 games has been Matt Duchesne. And I just don't know why. I don't know why they don't play their top line 18, 19 minutes. It just makes no sense to me.
Well, you know why? It's because there's 5 good teams in the Western Conference, and they only need half their roster to get to the playoffs. It's basically why.
Yeah, it's got to be why. And then, I don't have a ton of interest 3-4 on the road for Dallas. You want to play that third line as a filler, I think that's fine. You want to play that top line in MME at 0.7 projected ownership, I think that's fine. Vancouver side, a little about less interesting. Like, they're on a heater, like a heater. Their shooting percentages are unsustainably high. If you want to go to them tonight because it's 3 and 4 on the road for Dallas, I think that's fine. There's almost no ownership there. There's 16,000 and change for the top 6 lines there. You want to get over the field in MME, that's fine. I just don't have a ton of interest in this game in single entry.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the ice time. I was just looking over the team's last 5 games. Seguin and Duchesne around 12-15 a game at 5-on-5, and Rope Hintz is at 12-25. They're basically the same line at 5-on-5. And when we were looking at the power play, the second power play unit's getting like 40 to 45% of the power play time. So they are basically splitting lines. Like, the thing that separates Dallas 1 now from that Seguin line is basically just efficiency. That's, there'll be a line that can score on 12% of their shots at 5-on-5 rather than like 10%. Like, that's basically all that's separating them at this point. So I do like your call on Dallas 3 here. For me, it's just like, I don't have a super expensive stack that I'm going to be playing tonight elsewhere. That's like, if you're playing Colorado, we'll get to that game next. That's going to be quite the late night hammer. Then I can definitely see that. Duchesne, Seguin, and Marchment, I was telling you before the show, Mason Marchment's scoring chance creation numbers have been pretty good this year. Like, he's been one of the engines on that line. I'm Matt Duchesne right there along with him. So I do like that Dallas 3 line. I think Dallas 1 is back in play again. Yeah. Vancouver's penalty kill is very bad, even with less of the share of power play time. That's a power play line that can score like twice in 4 chances, especially against this Vancouver penalty kill that has been struggling to start the year. The Canucks penalty kill, like 25th by shot attempts allowed per minute on the PK. Goals against, their 21st. Like, this isn't a good penalty kill that Dallas is facing. So again, in like a 20 max situation, I think I might have some Dallas 1, certainly 50 or 150 max or something like that. But it is Dallas 3 I like as the filler here tonight. Nothing for me on the Vancouver side. Even at their ownerships, I think there are just other low-owned spots. Again, not playing a team that's better than them.
Yeah, and you can get, you have teams that are $500 more expensive, like the Florida second line, the Minnesota top line, et cetera, et cetera. I'd rather play those teams much more than Vancouver. Let's get to the last game of the night here. Colorado Avalanche with a 3.1 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 2.9 total. Now, man, I've been in my head arguing with myself. I feel like the monkey Homer Simpson about this line right here, because Colorado top line is 24,700. Vegas is 10-0-1 to start the season, but it is so deceiving. They're going to be getting the Eichel-Marchessault-Barbashev matchup, and in 120-minute sample this season, that Vegas top line's only controlling 48% of the shot share, and they've have an expected goals against per 60 of almost 3. And my God, Colorado one's coming in at 3.3% projected ownership. Do I really want to take half of my salary and put it into a Colorado top line here tonight? Maybe. Like, honestly, maybe, because everyone has this perception that Vegas is this really good defensive team, and they don't take a ton of penalties, et cetera, et cetera. Like, they have not been great defensively this season. I really like the Colorado top line here tonight.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I do like the Colorado top line here tonight. Obviously kudos to Vegas for their great start. You got to hand it to them, but 928 overall save percentage, shooting 10.7% as a team. I think their PDO is like second or third in the league. Don't forget, Vegas is also a team in the Western Conference. Like, I hate to slag on the Western Conference, but like
Pacific Division specifically, it's just awful.
Like their season so far, Seattle, San Jose, Anaheim was their first 3 games of the year. And over their last 6 games, they played Montreal, Winnipeg, and Chicago twice. Like, I'd hope they'd win those games. You know what I mean? So, yeah, not very good defensive numbers on the top line. Worst defensive numbers on the second line. I mentioned this on Twitter earlier. Vegas' second line, Vegas with the second line on the ice is generating about as many shots per minute as Noah Gregor is by himself for Toronto. Literally, Noah Gregor is shooting as much as the entire Vegas second line. I don't know if they're like this. There were Chicago teams like a decade ago that really wouldn't take the season seriously until like March. So maybe Vegas is doing that. It's either that or like it's either they really just don't care or they're playing injured. Like there is no other explanation for what's going on with that Vegas second line. And like it's not like they're scoring either. 0.8 goals per 60 minutes. They're not doing anything. They're going to go up against that Colorado second line. Probably going to have Thomas Tatar there. I kind of like Colorado too, just for the reason that you were saying Vegas doesn't take a lot of penalties. They don't take a lot of penalties. They're at 3.1 per game. That's 28th in the league for time shorthanded, or fifth fewest time shorthanded per game. The penalty kill has been good, largely because of the goaltending, but that's the thing that's kind of leaning me towards Colorado too. But yeah, I agree. I think the Colorado top six is going to get very much overlooked here tonight. And I don't know if you necessarily have to full stack him. I think you can double center, do like McKinnon, Johansson plus Rantanen, save some money from Lekkonen's price. Then you can still fit in a decent filler stack beside them. But I agree with you. With Colorado having a bit of time off here, hopefully got their defensemen a little bit healthy, though Makar and Byram took another maintenance day, I believe. I don't know if those guys are healthy either. I'm with you. I like the Colorado side here. I think I like Colorado too a little bit more. But yeah, that Colorado top six, I think, is definitely being undervalued here tonight.
Yeah. And with like that Stone line, we're both the same age with back problems. Like how does Mark Stone care about the season with back problems right now if he just needs to be healthy for the playoffs? Yeah. Man, what a slate. Coming up after us at 6 p.m., NBA Live Before Lock with Emac and Neil. If you are playing NBA, stay tuned for that. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen and goalies here, shall we? Let's start with defensemen with Adam Pelech out for the Islanders. I think Noah Dobson's back in play. It's not the best matchup here, but he's going to play 27, 28 minutes. He has 6,900, which, if he's going to play 27, 28 minutes, it's fine. Like Makar at 7,700, I don't know. Like, I don't think he's healthy, but it's hard to speculate on that kind of stuff. Quinn Hughes, 6,300, still underpriced for what he's been for his role in Vancouver now. Erik Karlsson sticks out like a sore thumb at 6,200. Who else you like him?
Yeah, I mean, Erik Karlsson and John Carlson. Though John Carlson, his ownership is projecting to be the highest of any player on the slate here tonight, over 20%. I don't know if I want to play John Carlson at like 20 to 25% on a 13-game slate. That seems a little bit high for me. Shea Theodore. I mean, we just talked about Vegas and Colorado. Colorado is one of the most penalized teams in the league. And one thing Vegas is doing is getting more power plays than they were last year. So don't mind Shea Theodore. In the mid-price range, like Miro Heiskanen is an interesting guy because he doesn't put up peripherals. Like he doesn't shoot a lot. He doesn't block a lot of shots. But his price also came down quite a bit on DraftKings. I think it's down like 800 or 900 from their last game. Yeah. In the mid-fives against the Canucks, like I don't mind that. Obviously, Trouba, I think you already mentioned him. Seth Jones for Chicago, like there's only so many guys that can actually shoot the puck on that team, and Seth Jones is actually one of them. And Florida is a high volume team. Like Jones could easily put up a block shot bonus on DraftKings here tonight. Vince Dunn, 4,100 for Seattle. Like Calgary is a team that shoots a lot. He doesn't usually block a lot of shots, but at least that's a threat. And with Calgary's goaltending, like everybody from Seattle is in play. It's that old Gary Oldman meme, who's in play against Calgary? Everyone. For super cheap defenseman, Connor Clifton is the one that really stood out for me from Buffalo. I think he played 25 minutes last night with Samuelsson out of the lineup. He's only 2,600 on DK. He might have to block a lot of Toronto shots here tonight. Gavrikov and Jacob Bernard-Docker under 3K. Eric Gustafsson, of course. running the power play for the New York Rangers. TJ Brody with Timothy Liljegren out. Brody's probably going to see a little bit more ice time, so don't mind him. And if you want to avoid like the super high owned Erik Karlsson, probably Chris Letang as well from Pittsburgh, I think Marcus Pettersson makes some sense.
Yeah, the one that I will mention that you didn't touch on, if you can't get to Gustafsson for whatever reason, I think Keandre Miller at 3,100, he's going to play big minutes tonight, so I think he's fine as well. Let's get to goalies here. Joseph Woll, most expensive on the board at 8,500. Cheapest goalie in play tonight is probably going to be Devin Levi at 6,900. I don't know. Like, I just don't even know if I can handle that. I'm a big Levi guy, but like in this matchup, I don't know. Like, there isn't really a goalie that really sticks out. I like Demko at 7,400. Georgiev, I'm thinking Seinfeld. Georgiev, 7,500 is all right. Sorokin, obviously. Sorokin's the one that kind of sticks out, right? At 7,800. Who else are you liking?
Sorokin, Ville Husso at home. Boston hasn't really filled the net so far this year. He's only 7,200. Peter Mrazek, obviously Chicago at home. Like Peter Mrazek might end up the goalie that I play the most this season. Him at home against Florida for sure. If you're paying up, Joseph Woll, Aiden Hill from Vegas. Don't mind Grubauer either. Calgary has had trouble scoring. Most of their lines have had trouble scoring, so I don't mind Grubauer if you want to pay up at 8,100.
Yeah. It's funny because a few seasons ago I had like a pretty bad single entry season. I lost some money. And then you get the season recap and it's I forget what it was, but it was I played some goalie that was just awful. And I was like, oh, probably why I lost a lot of money this year. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
I mean, we got to do it because you got to do it. Marco Rossi from Minnesota.
There you go. I'm going Cole Caulfield.
Ooh, small goals boy. I like it. Caulfield Rossi getting hat tricks tonight. That'd be something else. I'd be dancing in the streets.
I might actually go dance in the street right now. I'm so jacked up. All right, we'll be back. I don't know when we'll be back, Monday or Tuesday, most likely, but I need to go shower off this caffeine. Make sure to click that like button, smash the subscribe button on your way out. I don't know why you guys aren't on premium yet. Click that link in the description, get that weekly, get that monthly, but we'll be back either Monday or Tuesday next week. Hopefully we're talking about you winning, and good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.